I think it's safe to say United Airlines has had better days. The company's stock plummeted after it bumped a passenger against his will and forcibly removed the screaming man, and as you've seen 1,000 times, dragged him down the aisle. The videos of the confrontation, there were several, have since been seen by millions around the world. United quickly released a statement from its CEO, Oscar Munoz, which read in part, "This is an upsetting event to all of us here at United. I apologize for having to re-accommodate these customers." Re-accommodate? I assume that's fancy talk for abuse. A statement he followed up on with an email to his employees saying the customer was approached several times to gain his compliance and come off the aircraft, and each time he refused and became more disruptive and belligerent, an account that's been refuted by some other passengers.
He was fine. He was like the rest of us, a little stunned that they would even suggest such a thing, and not disruptive at all.
Earlier today, United issued a clarification that the flight was not oversold, but rather they needed room for 4 crew members to fly. And then this afternoon, evidently after some time to reflect, Munoz released his third statement, which read in part, "The truly horrific event that occurred on this flight has elicited many responses from all of us. Outrage, anger, disappointment. What a difference a day and $1 billion in stock losses makes." Munoz went on to apologize and promised a full review of everything that happened, incentivizing policies, and how they partner with law enforcement. Joining me now are Paul English, who co-founded 2 travel websites, Kayak and Lola. Good to see you, Paul. And C.A. Webb is co-founder of Underscore Venture Capital and board member of the Alliance for Business Leadership. Good to see you, C.A.
Good to see
so
you.
When you see this as business leaders, do you look at it any differently than I do as an outraged customer, Paul?
I mean, the first thing I look at it is as a customer, not so much as a business leader. And I think it's absolutely horrifying to think that that could be me or it could be a parent or a friend of mine. It just seems like, what country are we living in that something like this would happen?
Could this be, I mean, it's like Harvard Business School class. Could this guy, Munoz, have handled this any worse? Forget the thing, the makeup today. Could he have handled this any worse than he did as a PR manner?
Well, actually, everyone in this situation couldn't have handled it worse. And I'm talking about the other people on the flight attendants, the gate agent, the pilot, and certainly Oscar himself.
Don't leave out the cops. We'll get to them in a couple of minutes. So how does he, I mean, by the way, this guy is being credited, you probably know since you're in the industry, as this great turnaround artist. How do you turn this around? How do you fix? I mean, he's in deep you-know-what in China.
Yep.
They do a lot of flights in China, and a lot of Chinese are very upset because obviously there was Dr. Dao, the passenger was an Asian guy. Is this a fixable kind of thing, or has this guy got to go to fix it?
Well, the unfortunate reality for Oscar is that we've seen that we learn a lot about our leaders in situations of stress. And he got it wrong the first time, the second time. He sort of got it right the third time, and at that point, it barely matters.
No, but it seems to me, and I consider myself sort of a student of apologies, when you got it so wrong the first 2 times, you have to say the third time, I know I got it wrong the
right.
first and second time, not just apologize as if 1 and 2 didn't go before. So do you think as a CEO type, this guy can fix once again his company or no?
Well, it's going to take a long time. I mean, I think the first thing, he has to do more and more apologies. He has to appear vulnerable. He has to act not as a CEO of a company trying to manage the bottom line, but he has to act as sort of a fellow passenger and person, just talking about what an awful, awful event it was.
You know, I admit I have a bias here. My notion is corporate accountability is an anachronism in this country. You know, yesterday, at the same time this is happening, we're hearing people praising Wells Fargo after they screwed, if you'll excuse the expression, 2 million customers. Oh, we're doing this big clawback from the 2 executives responsible. What they fail to say is after they give back tens of millions, they only have tens of millions more that they were paid on the way out the door left. So is there such a thing? Nobody goes to jail for, I'm not saying Munoz should go to jail. Maybe the cops should go to jail. That's a whole other issue. We'll get to that in a minute. But is corporate accountability, is that an anachronism? Am I right, or am I?
I hope not. And I think that that's where I'm so grateful for social media and
Did you see the hashtag reaccommodate Munoz, which I thought was pretty good?
Well, I will say that the memes coming out of this are hilarious and hideous all at once.
Both,
but I'm grateful to my fellow citizens that people are pushing this as far as they are, and that this has been the story of the day.
But how pathetic is it that we on social media have to exact accountability? I think CA is right. Authorities are not. Is the board ready to fire this guy? Are federal authorities ready to come down criminally on the people at Wells Fargo? I mean, is that what it's come to? Is that we are the ones who have to hold CEOs accountable for their miscreant behavior?
I mean, I feel great about the activity on Twitter today just because if you think about what would happen in an incident like this before Twitter, it'd just be a lot of lack of knowledge about what's actually happening. So I think having all the other passions of the plane come out, having people respond to it, it just gives a lot of information about how people are thinking about the situation.
Can we get the one thing that wasn't on your list that I added, the cop thing here. This cop who did this, one of my colleagues said it gives new meaning to reaching across the aisle, which it really does. This cop is on leave. Explain to me, I know you're not a criminal justice expert, but explain to me why this guy is not in jail for assaulting and committing battery on a fellow human being.
Yeah, it's interesting. In some ways, I'm not surprised by what happened there.
What do you
if you just
mean
look at, I mean, in some ways, I feel like sometimes we're living in a police state where there's just been story after story of people in law enforcement overreacting. And I think sometimes we should not be surprised when we see something like this, an innocent person being basically abused by a law enforcement agent who was given some information, we need to remove this passion, but dramatically overreacted. And I just think it's the tone in the country right now that there's a little bit of overreaction to events like this.
Can I add one element to that? This guy is Asian. Do you think the cop would have done, I know it's speculation, the same thing if it was a white passenger sitting in that seat who refused to get off the plane?
I don't know the answer, but I think it's an excellent question.
I can guarantee you that wouldn't have happened to me.
Would not have happened to you.
A male agent would not have come up to an upper middle class white woman and dragged me out of my seat, hitting my head on the, wall and dragging me down in front of my fellow passengers.
Well,
it wouldn't happen.
That's
my white privilege.
I don't think it would have happened to me either, and I happen not to be a woman, but I share one other thing with you. One of the reasons it struck a chord with me today is not so much how disgusting the story was itself, but it seems to me that it's a high-profile, very visible example of the customer always comes last kind of thing. And I know this is an outlier. I know this is extreme kind of thing. Is that an unfair? I know there are people in business. I mean, your businesses particularly are all about customers. I'll say it rather than you do because I've used your businesses. But in general, the big businesses, it's sort of like they're a captive audience. We do what we got to do to get the flight attendants to Louisville, literally or figuratively. Is that an overstatement or no?
There's a great article on Fortune.com today that the founder of Fast Company magazine, Bill Taylor, wrote. He's a local, lives in Wellesley.
Same one.
And one of the things he said is that this was just an utter failure of creativity and problem solving, right? Like the first thing you do when you read the story is go onto Google Maps and discover that those 4 employees needed to traverse about 5 hours of road.
297 miles, I
right?
checked too, yeah.
So someone at the airline could have actually requisitioned a car, put them on the road, and gotten them there without any of the injury that occurred.
In general, though, am I right? I mean, it is, if you have a captive audience, and there are very few other places that customer can go, whether it's a plane or elsewhere, this is the mentality, is it not? We can do anything. We can give you 1 pretzel instead of a meal, literally or I mean, I'm right, aren't I?
Yeah, I mean, it does feel a lot of times like we're captive on that plane, and that we're not the most important thing happening that day, when really, if you think about the best consumer-led businesses and best consumer brands, it's all about doing whatever you can to make it an incredible experience, and certainly we saw the opposite of that.
Maybe even answering the phone sometimes. You know a little bit about that. Paul, it's nice to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks.
See you. Pleasure
Good to
as
see you.
always.
Thanks,
Good
Jim.
to see you. Thanks so much.